Act 3 of Arcane was absolutely insane, so many crazy moments, most of them were incredible. I do have a few problems with the very ending though, so let's get into all of it. And as always, this is not a breakdown, there's smarter people out there than me to do that. This is just my thoughts on things that happen. We start off with episode 7 where we pick up with Echo, finally my guy. I've been waiting to get back to him and Heimerdinger's story for so long, and we finally got it, and it lived up to the hype and so much more than I could ever imagine. Echo obviously finds out that, hey, I'm in a completely different reality now. Everything is completely different here. Most notably, Jinx never becomes Jinx. She is still Powder. If this wasn't already pulling on my heartstrings, just seeing Echo realize, hey, this is Powder, the girl I used to know before what she became. We also get the reveal that, hey, in this reality, Vi is actually dead. Oh my, dude, this was just so peak. And just watching Echo experience all of this, seeing Vander and everyone back to normal, and he realizes I can't have this forever. It was honestly heartbreaking. I've been seeing all the Spider-Verse comparisons, and yeah, they're there to make and honestly absolutely peak both of these storylines. And obviously at the end, we get the Heimerdinger sacrifice as he jumps out to make sure that Echo can get back to his main timeline. I'm so glad this stupid rat finally died. I'm just kidding, calm down. I'm sure he's not really fully dead. He's probably just sitting back in the old dimension or something. He's gonna come up with his own way to come back. I know the fans have been asking for a long time, but I actually did not expect them to give us that Kate and Vi scene in the prison, but you know, respect to them for going all out and wilding out with it. I do have to say on a serious note though, the soundtrack during this scene and honestly through all 3 of these episodes, there are some amazing original songs in this. I'm kind of mad they're not on streaming yet. Mel has honestly become one of my favorite characters of this show so far. Everything with her in episode 8 and 9 was so interesting in my opinion. Seeing her get all her powers were also so cool, and her finally standing up to her own mom. Great scenes. I really hope in whatever spin-offs they do, Mel is involved because I would love to see more of this character. Everything with Victor and Jace was so incredible, but I do have one problem at the very end of episode 9. I think his powers became way too strong, and it kind of reduces the stakes of every other storyline that's happening. Like, oh, there's a million different things happening, but every single thing pretty much relies on Victor right now in this moment, and that's kind of the only thing that matters now. Which, listen, I understand if you have a character this powerful, people are going to complain either way. If you underpower him or give him just his full range of powers, I just feel like it was a little bit overkill, but I'm glad him and Jace had the ending they have, kind of being dead, but not really in this new like sort of space and time. I'm still mad they didn't kiss though, sue me. Before I get into some real criticisms, let me just explain myself. I think all 3 of these episodes in Act 3 are great on their own. I just think we should have had more episodes in between them because things felt a bit rushed for me this season, especially in these last 3 acts. Like again, I loved all the slow moments with Echo and Powder in the alternate dimension in episode 7, but that's an entire episode taking away from the main storyline, and then we just jam it together in 8 and 9. I think an episode between 7 and 8 and 8 and 9 would have been really helpful, and then adding like an extra 15 minutes on to the end of episode 9 also would have been helpful. I'll get to that in a little bit after I talk about my main problems with episode 9, which ultimately comes down to Jinx and the ending of her storyline. I have a multitude of problems with this. First of all, as the smallest point, but I think this was a bit too predictable. On my TikTok, I made a video a week ago predicting the characters most likely to die, and I pretty much exactly said in that video, Jinx is going to make the sacrifice to save Vi so Vi can live happily ever after with Caitlyn, and that's exactly what happened, which I would have been fine with, but I don't think the execution was that good. To be honest, I don't think this moment hit as hard as they thought it would, and I feel like it was a bit of a cop-out because A, it doesn't seem like she actually ended up dying, but I'll get into that in a second, and B, I feel like this moment was just so crowded in with so many other storylines all converging at once, it didn't even let this moment breathe and have the impact you wanted it to have. I think Isha's death honestly hit 10 times harder emotionally, and the whole scene was just so much better well done. It was solely focusing on this. We weren't cutting in and out as much. The music and the visuals also just felt like a more grand spectacle than what happened with Jinx's apparent death. Brings me to the last problem I have with it is, yeah, it seems like Jinx didn't actually die because at the very end you can see Caitlyn looking at the blueprints and she sees kind of these air ducts and the hex gates, and then we see the ship flying away. So it seems like she probably escaped out of these air ducts, then flew away on the ship because in the very first episode of the show, Powder says, I'm gonna ride one of those things one day, so this seems like obviously what happened. I think either keeping Jinx alive or killing off Jinx in this moment would have been the better way to handle it, instead of doing this kind of fake out death and then kind of pseudo revealing 2 minutes later that, hey, she's actually alive, but like half the fan base missed that she's probably alive still. I just don't think for a series finale, this is a good way to leave it so open-ended. And it's not just Jinxes. There's so many other questions about the Piltover and Zaun conflict. I feel like we just left things way too open. I know everybody's like, oh, this is a setup. We're going to get more League of Legends shows. But I wanted this story to be concluded in the Arcane show. I don't want to just hear about it in a new spin-off taking place in some other area. Another issue I have with this is that it committed my biggest pet peeve, which is the Deathly Hallows Part 2 ending or the Deathly Hallows book ending, because they're pretty much the same. The huge final climax, Voldemort gets defeated, the battle is over. You get about 1 minute of what happened right after the battle. Boom, that's it. You don't see any of the immediate aftermath for a couple days after, how characters are recovering. And you just skip to 19 years later, which is at least better than what we got in Arcane, even though I don't like the epilogue in Harry Potter either. At least it's something. Arcane desperately needed a little bit of an epilogue, like 10 to 15 minutes extra onto the final episode. I understand that Arcane has always been an incredibly fast-paced show, but I feel like this was the time we needed a little bit of time to just slow down, give us some real good character moments instead of just glancing at Echo sitting here sadly alone and Caitlyn and Vi sitting happily ever after acting like Jinx isn't dead. It just felt like such an abrupt ending, and I wish we just had like an extra episode or two, or honestly even in another entire arc to just flesh this out a little bit more. I know this has been pretty negative, and I want to just say I think episodes 7, 8, and 9 were all incredible and have great moments in them. Like, they are great episodes on their own, but 8 and 9 as the final 2 episodes of the show don't really work for me. Side note, make sure to follow me on Serialized at Vets Movies. I log all my episodes I watch over there. I kind of touched on it earlier. Another issue I have is that the stuff with Victor was so massive in scale. I think that's another reason why I felt like we needed extra episodes or another entire season dealing with this stuff, because the stakes got so big that it kind of took away a lot more of the personal connections you had to the characters. The first season's just a lot more personal, and the second season's a lot more giant war, everyone's gonna die, it's the end of the world. It was still an incredible season overall. Like, there are some amazing 10 out of 10 masterpiece episodes in those first 6, even though none of these last 3 quite hit that reach. Like I said, they're good episodes on their own. I just don't know if it's ever going to hit me as a satisfying ending for this, but we'll have to see what they do with the other spin-offs. Maybe they can kind of fix this issue I have. Overall, the entire season gets like a 9 out of 10 for me. Let me know all your favorite parts of it, least favorite parts of the season, and your rating of it 1 through 10 in the comments below.